Just after midnight on March 24, 1989, a distress call went out from the supertanker Exxon Valdez.
Evidently, we're getting some oil, and we're going to be here for a while.
It was 12 hours before efforts to contain the slick began. And by this time, almost 11 million gallons of oil had gushed from the ship. When they finally arrived on the scene, crews deployed barrier booms to corral the oil, and oil-skimming ships to remove it from the surface of the sea. By the end of the first week, the slick covered nearly 100 square miles. Waves of weathered crude now smeared the coastline. This was to become America's most expensive industrial accident. Two months into the spill, the oil covered 800 miles of shoreline and reached 470 miles south into the Gulf of Alaska. According to the state of Alaska, only a small fraction of the oil spilled was recovered from the sea by booms and skimmers. Of the nearly 11 million gallons spilled, somewhere between 20 and 40% is thought to have evaporated. The state says that perhaps 13% was recovered. Exxon claims it was closer to 25%. This leaves at least 3.5 million and perhaps more than 7 million gallons unaccounted for. Where did it go? And what are the environmental costs of this unrecovered oil? The oil's immediate impacts were obvious and grisly. Sea otters were among the hardest hit in those early weeks. Some were poisoned by toxins in the oil, like benzene, toluene, and xylene. Many others succumbed to hypothermia when the insulating property of their fur was destroyed. Tens of thousands of birds were also killed by direct contact with the oil. And contaminated carcasses scavenged by healthy animals spread the toxins through the food chain. The bulk of the oil ended up on the shoreline, and experts predict that over the coming years, the harsh Alaskan weather will remove much of it naturally. But could oil that persists, most of it beneath the rocky beaches, pose a continuing threat to coastal life? In 1969, this salt marsh in Massachusetts was awash with thousands of gallons of fuel oil, spilled by a grounded barge a few miles off the coast.
This was all dead. All of this area was killed. Okay.
Although the marsh appears to have recovered, they've come to see if any remnants of the spill can be found.
Oh.
Oh, wow. That is oil.
It doesn't look oily particularly.
Can't see anything.
But it's really fuel oil. There's no question about it.
You've smelled that often enough.
And you can see it on the surface of the water down there.
Yep.
Analysis of the 20-year-old oil shows that it has lost many, though not all, of its toxic properties. But it's not known if the persistence of oil means that it's still having some biological impact.
The effects of an oil spill are dramatic and disastrous, one as big as the Exxon Valdez spill. And then in the course of a few years, most of the effects, most of the obvious effects, the things that the tourists are looking at now, will for the most part be gone. The remaining effects will be subtle. They'll be difficult to detect. It doesn't mean they won't be important, but they won't be readily obvious.